Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Tech Productions. Today I, Bancroft, am bringing you all another deck profile. Not just any deck profile, but my Lord Slug deck, which aka the deck that hugs, or as Fluff likes to put it.
If you having slug problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems, but his child's at 1.
There's one example of they're there for a reason. Let's get into it. So, Lord Slug, if you're not familiar with this deck likes to give you cards and your opponent cards. The leader, when this card attacks, you and your opponent draw a card. If you have 3 or more green energy, when you activate Rejuvenate skill, draw 2 cards, then flip this card over. Kind of like a way to awaken if your opponent's trying to stall you out. If your life is 4 or less, like the normal way of doing it. And you and your opponent may draw 1 card, then you switch 2 of your energies to active mode, flip this card over. I prefer that awaken better. I always like to maximize my energy than just drawing more cards. But, you know, I've had in the past had to do Rejuvenate, which wasn't a bad thing. Alright, so once you awaken, this leader is now at 20k. During your opponent's turn, if they have 7 or fewer cards in their hand, though, this card loses 5k power, making it a basic 15k leader. When this card attacks, it retains the ability for you and your opponent to draw 1 card. And the activate main once a turn, if your opponent has 10 or more cards in their hand, you can play up to 1 mono green slug army card with an energy cost of 2 or less from your from your drop area, which is not bad. That's why you can cycle unique cards that you need back on your board to continue the engine or potentially protection methods. So let's get into the actual deck itself. Unisons are a key thing for this deck. You need to play 4, at least I believe you need to play 4 King Piccolo Dimensional Conqueror. Reason being, he has Rejuvenate. We don't really care about it. Like I said, if you want to use Rejuvenate, go right ahead. It's not really a big thing, but this card can be played on your turn 1 if you go second. Activate main for 1 green energy. If your leader card is mono green and your opponent has 7 or more cards in their hand, play this card from your hand with a marker on it, and you can't play Unisons for the turn. So it's not bad. +1, you choose 1 card in your hand, you place it at the bottom of this card. That's the cost. Then you and your opponent draw 1 card. You choose up to 1 of your green battle cards, original energy cost of 1 in your hand, and play it. And at the end of your turn, your opponent may choose 1 card and place it at the bottom of their deck. So you're going to see a theme of that where a lot of cards make your opponent draw cards, but they also give your opponent the option to putting cards back in their deck. Most times your opponent won't do that until mid to late game when they're beginning to draw too many cards and they don't want to potentially deck out on you. A go-to one drop for this deck is always the Lord Slug Conquer Restored. It is unique. Does not have barriers, so if it gets hit, that's a problem. But keep in mind, your leader does have to activate main to bring it back. If your leader card is Slug Army card, when this card is played from your hand, you and your opponent draw 1 card, and it has the same clause where they can put a card back. Activate main if your leader card is Slug Army, and your opponent has 7 or more cards in their hand, and 1 or more energy, so you cannot do this, obviously, if your opponent has no energy. But, choose up to 1 mono green Slug Army card with 19,000 power or less in your hand, and play it. You cannot activate main on copies of this card. It's a limit 1 before limit 1 became a thing. But hey, this allows you to play a lot of the 3 drops very easily. And one of the 3 drops that's key to this deck is Wings. This particular Wings has Bond 2 when it's in rest mode, and your leader, when this card's in rest mode, mono green slug army cards in your battle area cannot be KO'd by opponent's skill. It's just a great protection. And when this card's in rest mode also, it's a 19k beater, so especially early game, your opponent has to use cards in their hands just to combo out of this. And typically, if they're swinging with like a 10k battle card early on, or potentially a 15k, that's at least 1 to 2 cards that they get rid of. And they usually have to get rid of 1 card from your hand. Keep in mind, a lot of times when you draw with this deck, you're expending resources to get those draws for you and your opponent, where your opponent's not expending any resources. So your opponent will typically have a larger hand than yours. So just protect it when you can. If you can't keep it alive long enough, that's fine. We do have other ways of keeping this card protected. We'll get into those later. Other 3 drops, or other free cards you can play off the 1 drop. Let's get down the board real quick. Boom. I play 2 of the combo killing slug. Deflect, so it's coming in. You probably can't stop it unless obviously they have a card that targets it, like the charismatic villain. Auto Bond 2. If you lead a card, slug army card, when your opponent uses a card in the combo, you may place that card in its owner's drop area. If you do, you and your opponent draw 1 card and negate this skill for turn. So you can just do it once per turn during your turn, during your opponent's turn. And this one doesn't have the clause where your opponent puts a card back, so it just gives them a card and they keep that card. But when this card is removed from your battle area by an opponent's skill or KO'd, if your opponent has 7 or more cards in their hand, you play up to 1 green slug army card with energy cost of 1 from your drop area. So it potentially can cycle back the 1-drops here or other 1-drops in our deck, which we'll get into a little bit down the road. One of my favorite is the promo Return to Life. If all your energy is not green when this card is played from your hand, you and your opponent draw 1 card. Then you choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards, KO it, and then it has the clause where they can put a card back up on their deck. The new Anniversary Slug, which if you have 3 or more energy, doesn't specify green, so you could play a hybrid color in this deck if you wanted to with this one. But this card does gain dual attack if you have 3 energy. If your leader card is Slug Army card and all your energy is mono green, so this is the mono green clause, which is the draw 1, then your opponent gets to put a card back at the end of the turn. No, sorry, it does not have that the clause, so it's just you and your opponent draw a card. Bond 2, when this card attacks, if your opponent has 7 or more cards in their hand, this card gains 6,000 power for the battle. So potentially this is a free play 25k dual attack on turn 3 and up, which isn't a bad thing, and typically it's a card your opponent will try to get rid of or stop attacking. And that's for the battle. So if someone plays Violent Ray against you, this will still go through just fine because it's technically a 19k on swing. The auto procs after the negate phase, then it gains a 6,000 boost, which is pretty cool. So going back to the Unison, for other 1-drops we like to play in this deck, Angelus, which is a promo one. This search your top 5 cards of your deck, add up to 1 mono green Slug Army card with energy cost of 3 or less, or a Unison Pacific cost of 2 to your hand, which is always nice. 1-drop Wings Blocker, which if this card allows you to rejuvenate for 1 less marker, which is always nice if you want to go that route. But this card also has, when this card activates blocker skill, you and your opponent draw 1 card. So during your opponent's turn, they swing at you, go block, draw a card. It's pretty cool. It does have unique, so you cannot have more than 1 on the board. But like I said, this is a card you could cycle back for your leader's ability, which is pretty nice. Or even the 3-drop combo killing slug. So there's all the kind of the 1-drops we play. Two of the free walkers, just because they're free to play. And I mean, it's always nice to be able to play free cards. You can probably get away with not using this one, but I've always enjoyed the idea of just being able to drop this card and having a blocker. And especially early game, if your opponent knows how your deck runs, particularly having 2 blockers to protect your unisons is always a great thing. 3 of the Metamacha, which is a great card for making your opponent draw a card or potentially helping yourself self-awaken in case you play against a stall deck. Activate main for 1 green energy. If your leader card is Slug Army and all of your energy is mono green, you send this card from your drop area to the warp, add up to 1 card from your life to your hand, play 1 meta token, then you and your opponent may draw 2 cards. At the end of the turn, your opponent can choose up to 2 cards, put them back at the bottom of their deck. You cannot activate more than 1 of these per turn, which is a bummer. But hey, it stops you from potentially making your opponent draw 6 cards in 1 turn, plus other draw effects. Going into the defensive package, I only played 2 Dormants. I mean, I get a wide enough board. I know my opponent, I give my opponent a lot of cards as well. But with the blockers, 19Ks, the leader being a 20K on most of my opponent's swings, I feel like Dormant's not a bad option. But I also play 3 of the Majin Buu, which I know kind of goes against the idea of giving your opponent cards. But the problem is here is that they tend to keep those cards. So if I play a Majin Buu or a Bupo on my opponent's first swing and they want to continue swinging after that, they get rid of those cards I've been giving them. So that way, when I get them more cards, they're less likely to put them in their deck and just hang on to those cards they keep. 2 Homicidal Clones, just because they're great. It's a negate and a blocker, so for 1 life, it can stop 2 attacks, or for 2 energy, stop 2 attacks. Since we do play Unison, Charismatic Villain, it's just a great way of stopping your opponent from playing battle cards. So, in my matches, I chose my super combo being the Durag Gohan. I changed them to Paragus, and the reason being is that I remember originally when I played this deck getting really thin on my deck. Like, I was just drawing so many cards, and I'd use the Gohan super combos to put cards back in my deck so I wouldn't deck out. But playing this past weekend, I realized I wasn't doing as much, and that's because I'm not playing the 2-drop Lord Slug that searches your deck for more Slug cards. I decided to take a different approach with this deck. I don't mind this one, but I think in the end I still prefer playing the 2-drop with searches for the 4-drop to play a free 3-drop as well. But that's just my flavor. But yeah, in this variant, if you're not playing a deck that thins the deck out with battle cards, Pegasus isn't bad. You draw 2, warp 1 then, so that way you can choose what you want for your upcoming matches. I'm not normally a toolboxy guy. I like just playing theme stuff, but I got a little fun with this one. So, 1 promo chill for 2 energy, pretty much pops any battle card with barrier, which is not a bad thing. The clause here is that the battle card has to be equal to or less than the number of cards in your opponent's hand. This deck likes to give your opponent tons of cards. So that being said, this card for 2 energy, I can pretty much pop any card with no problem. 1-drop Kakunsa. Unique, it does draw on play, which is pretty cool. It does have an activate main, which I kind of don't like, but getting a 20k double strike on the board for 1 energy isn't bad, so I will use it from time to time. It is a burst 2. Like I said, I don't like it as much, but it has come in handy. And I will point out real quick, the active main here, choose 1 card in your hand, place under this card, you and your opponent draw 1 card. Then you may choose 1 green battle card, original energy cost of 1. So you could activate +1 here to play Kakunsa for free, then activate main to burst 2, and then swing with a 20k double strike at your opponent for no energy spent on that case. I do play the 4-drop negate Kakunsa, which is only 2 energy during your opponent's turn, which just pops a card. So in case your opponent swings a problematic card, you have to just go ahead and get rid of it. 5-drop Gohan. Deflect unique double strike, but when your life is 3 or less, reduce the energy cost of this card in your hand by 3. So it's a 2-cost card, which is not a bad thing for deflect double strike 25k. But when on play, you choose 1 of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, KO it. Choose up to 1 of your opponent's unisons, remove a marker from it. It's just another way of getting rid of problem cards for 2 energy if I have to waste too much of my own resources. Alright, sorry, I blanked there. The next card, 5-drop Lord Slug. This is a good card to play when you have a wide board and you want to just remove your opponent's board. When this card is played, choose all of your opponent's battle cards, KO them, then choose 1 of your opponent's unison cards, remove 2 markers from it, depending on the matchup. That could get rid of a unison, get rid of their entire board. From here on out, though, once per turn, when your opponent activates a counterattack seal, your opponent chooses 6 cards in their hand and then discards the rest. Then you and your opponent draw 1 card. Keep in mind, this deck could potentially give your opponent like 12 to 14 cards. So on play here, your opponent's potentially losing half the cards in their hand already. But just in case my opponent has a board that's way more terrifying than mine, I also do play the 5-drop Majin Buu, which has Deflect Revenge. When this card's in rest mode, your opponent can't attack your looter card unless they choose 2 cards in their hand, discards them each time. When this card is played from your hand, choose all other non-token battle cards and unisons. Choose all other non-token cards in all battle areas and all unisons, ignoring barrier, negate their skills, place them in the owner's drop area. Your opponent then chooses 2 cards in their hands, discards them. If your leader card is mono green, place those cards under your leader instead. Doesn't really matter for Slug, but it's all good. If you have 5 or more energy, this card is placed in the drop area from your battle area by an opponent's skill. Play this card from your drop area. So pretty much you play it, you swing. Now from here on out, your leader is protected. So it's just an extra protection method. Last 3 cards in my deck. Got 1 over them just in case we need it. Extra pressure for free is always nice. Typically what I like to do is use the leader's ability to activate main to place a card into my battle area first before acting over them. That way I keep certain cards protected that way. And then if I want to combo it off later, like I've done the Meta Matcha once. I pulled it back just to pop its effect afterwards. But 25 dual attack's not bad. Especially if you give it double strike or any other card that doesn't have double strike. Giving it double strike is always a great thing. And then I went with the Kibito Kai because just stopping battle is always a great thing. And if my opponent does have a problematic unison, I could potentially steal it from them by using Spirit Boost too. And it's a 40k double strike. So that is the Lord Slug deck. Now, because we did play this for best of 3, I do technically have a sideboard, and I can go over that real quick. So starting up, just for extra support for the deck itself, I play 1 extra wings, 1 extra mana matcha, just in case I need it, because I'm playing against another deck that likes to go super aggro as well. Have the blocker support there, or potentially have the searching ability or self-awakening in case I'm playing against a deck that's trying to truly stall me out. 1 additional dormant potential, because I only played 2 initially, so in case I needed it. 3 of the Vegetas, just for the blue matchups, because our locals likes to play a lot of blue. We see a lot of arrival cards, so blue impulse as well, or even a counterplay card that plays on your turn. To stop quick plays, dark power, black mass sand. 1 Koichikai, which stops also your opponent from playing certain cards in your turn. Secret Identity Mass Sand, just for board control. I like to go a little bit towards the mid to long play in case my opponent does 2 and it's blue. Stops turning the tide. That's interesting. Apparently I had another Koichikai. I think that's the wrong card. I think that was supposed to be another charismatic villain or another slug. Cannot remember off the top of my head, but apparently I have that instead. But 2 Deborahs can come across hand control as well, because we have 1 or 2 guys who like to play it occasionally. But hey, that is the Lord Slug deck profile. Hope you all enjoyed that today. Keep in mind there's buttons down below and on the screen. And if you want to see anything else, I guess put in the comments down below. I know set 15 is coming out soon, so hopefully we'll get that out and get those going as soon as we get that as well. Yeah, that's it. Bye. Oh, read your cards on your plays, and like always, fluff out.